Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar highlighting the experiences and expertise of women in tech sales here at Salesforce. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm April Furnitz. I've been at Salesforce for 11 years, and I am currently a senior manager of business development at Salesforce. I'm excited to kick off today's session. We'll be focusing on essential skills for breaking into tech sales and how to grow your career once you're in the industry. With me today are two of my colleagues, Kunjan and Shannon. Kunjan, why don't you kick us off? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much, April. Hi, everyone. My name is Kunjan Manohar. I have been at Salesforce for about 3 years now, and currently I am a business development representative here in the Chicago Tower, and I help support retail and consumer goods companies here.
And Shannon, what about you?
Thanks, April. Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Knobloch, and I've been at Salesforce for about 4 years now, starting as a BDR where Kunjan is now, and then a small business account executive. And now I am a growth business account executive within Marketing Cloud.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here and excited for us to chat today. So to get things off, let's start about the journey into tech sales. Kunjan, can you tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest in sales and sales as a career choice for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really started in college. I was a tour guide for my university, and I quickly realized with that role, I loved being able to form relationships with the students on my tour and really get to find out their future passions. What really stood out to me in terms of that role was just being able to understand their needs and be able to kind of show them the university and kind of what that provided, offer kind of the right fit for them. So I actually had a friend that ended up working at Salesforce. She told me about one of the sales roles here. I looked a little bit more into it and I realized it kind of aligned with the passions that I wanted for a future role. She embodied everything I wanted in a profession, the skills of listening to people, being able to understand what they need, and kind of building that trust. So I do that in my day-to-day right now at Salesforce, and that's kind of what I love of being able to understand the customer, kind of have more tailored solutions and just create that value. And that's just what I love about my career right now.
That's such a good call out. I can totally relate to that, the tour guide in college, because I can still remember the tour guide who showed me around my alma mater for the first time. And he did such a good job of painting this picture of what life is like as a student there. And that totally sold me, which is a lot like what you're doing and what being in tech sales is, where you're sharing with companies a vision of what their day-to-day could be like using our technology. So I think it's not an obvious correlation or transferable skills, but when you put it like that, it makes total sense. Shannon, what about you?
Yeah, so my journey to Salesforce, I wouldn't say was exactly linear. Towards the end of college, I honestly wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but being a college athlete, I definitely wanted something that was going to be able to carry my competitive nature, my self-discipline, and motivation into a career. And I wanted to be able to see direct results from my effort. So I actually started my career in sales and marketing for a professional sports team. And I spent about 4 years in that, which I loved. But then at some point, I was ready for a new challenge, ready to pivot. And that's when I really started doing some research, most of which was on LinkedIn. And I found tech sales to be super interesting. From there, started networking on LinkedIn, reached out to a few people at Salesforce. Everyone was more than happy to chat with me. And from there, I really found out that tech sales wouldn't only provide me with those qualities that I had mentioned before, but I love the idea of working in a fast-paced environment, owning your own book of business, creating relationships with clients, and then ultimately helping them find those solutions that are truly going to digitally transform their business to ultimately set them up for success.
Awesome. Shannon, as a manager, I've hired a ton of former athletes, collegiate athletes, and I can say firsthand, they make some great sales professionals. I think they have a lot of what you said. They're intrinsically motivated, always seeking new challenges, and simply by the fact that they like to win can be a motivation. And they know how to be a team player, which is hugely important in the way that we sell here. And you mentioned the discipline. They're some of the most disciplined people I know too. So it's no mystery how you've had a successful career here. Well, so Shannon, as you've grown in your career, like what are some of the attributes and qualities? You've mentioned some of them, but maybe what are some additional qualities that have made you a successful seller?
Yeah, I think that's a really easy segue. And like I said, it kind of ties into what I was saying earlier. I think in sales, you just really need to be self-motivated, disciplined, coachable, and honestly super resilient, because in sales, there are days where you're going to take more losses than wins. You're going to get more no's than yeses, but it's really important how you choose to move forward from those losses and make the next day better, the next month better, maybe even the next quarter better, and how you're going to learn from that loss and what's going to set you up for future success. And then I also think something that is just huge is being willing and eager to learn. Even at the multiple roles I've had at Salesforce, I can confidently say I do not know everything about Salesforce, and I probably never will. But the best part is you have every resource imaginable available to you to enable and learn. And when you step into a new role, you do go through training, you do go through boot camp, onboarding, but it can feel like you are drinking from a water hose at times. So my transition from BDR to AE was totally different than my transition from small business to AE. But each time I had all the resources available to me to ensure that smooth transition. And I think really to round this all out is you need to be able to and willing to ask questions, ask for feedback, lean into your peers and leadership, because growth is truly about being vulnerable. So you need to understand when you don't know everything, and that's okay. And it's okay to ask for help.
Shannon, I completely agree with everything you said. I started off as a BDA here, and this is actually my third role here at Salesforce. So what I really love about Salesforce is we have so much enablement, and we have so many different places, whether it be peers or just different resources online to just kind of understand our products a little bit more. And like you said, obviously you're going to talk to a lot of customers. Sometimes they want to buy right at that moment, but sometimes you kind of have to nurture them a little bit. So that's what I love about Salesforce is we have so many different tools that kind of, gear you up for that conversation to make it a little bit easier. I know AI has been such a hot topic for us right now, and that's honestly helped me so much with my prospecting. Being in the retail space, it's changing so much. You have to keep up with industry trends. So being able to understand, okay, this is what they're focusing on at this moment and tailoring my approach and being like, this is how Salesforce can help has really helped out in terms of, getting them not only to understand what Salesforce is, but truly understand their pain and tell them we're not just a product, but we're actually like a solution to help their business.
Totally. I interview, you guys touched on a lot of the things that, like, when I'm interviewing for candidates, and we do a lot of interviews, one of the things we look for is resourcefulness, because working at a company like ours, we are blessed to have so many resources. Sometimes it's a challenge to navigate it all. But if you're someone who is resourceful, you're someone who goes and looks for solutions rather than a problem. And I think you've both in your answers have demonstrated kind of how instrumental that's been in your career growth. And continue to talk about using AI now. Like, now we have a new resource at our disposal that we have as employees of Salesforce that we get to offer our customers now, which is so cool. Like, when I was an AE here, we didn't have AI capabilities yet to drive these kind of interactions with our customers. And now, as someone who manages people who speak directly with our customers, like people like you, Kanjan, like the things that we're doing as a company with AI basically just takes things that make a successful salesperson and just augments it so that they can do more with less, have more of these personal interactions at scale, which, like, as we know in sales, sometimes it's a numbers game. So I know that AI has also helped me, like, as a sales leader, just better understand my business, be able to come up with better sales programs that actually help drive results for the company. So I agree. The AI stuff that we're doing is super, super cool. Well, and speaking of more personal interactions, as sales professionals, our jobs are highly collaborative and often rely on your ability to develop relationships. Shannon, how have key partners like mentors, sponsors, peers, customers, or other advocates played a role in your career trajectory at Salesforce?
Yeah, April, I think one thing I've learned from Salesforce, among many, is that creating these relationships is super important. So when I started, it was May of 2020, and the world was fully remote. And I just remember feeling like I was on my own little island working from my apartment here in Chicago. So I realized pretty early on that it's going to be really important to develop these relationships, not only with my peers, but also with my leaders, to just have people to learn from, seek advice, maybe to vent to every now and then, and overall feel like I'm not going at it alone. And along with that, there's so many different paths you can take within Salesforce when it comes to your trajectory. And it can seem very overwhelming. But when you have people in your network, more people to lean on for advice, guidance, or even for introductions, the better. I remember when I was a BDR and I was looking to move up to AE, and I told my manager, I'm thinking of going the marketing cloud route. She listed off 3 people right away that I could reach out to for guidance throughout the interview process, the networking process. And I just remember thinking how helpful that was to just kind of have almost like a head start. So I think the moral of the story here is every interaction you have at Salesforce is super important. It's a chance to build your personal brand and your network. And that network comes into play whether you're simply looking for support, guidance, honestly, a helping hand, or when you're looking to make strides in your career.
Yeah, Shannon, I completely understand where you're coming from. I actually also started my role remote here at Salesforce. So I was kind of put into the role and I was trying to form as many relationships as possible. But, sometimes with that computer screen, it can be a little bit harder. But I know we have so many different sorts of programs that you can get involved in. One of the best programs for me was actually I joined an ERG group, which we actually have 13 ERG groups. And for those that don't know, those are employee resource groups. So it's an opportunity to collaborate with different interests amongst different people. It's voluntary led. The one that I actually joined was called South Asia Force. And being able to be a part of this was just so transformative for me. I've been able to I moved to Chicago from the Indiana Tower a year ago, so didn't know as many people. I was able to connect with other people from not only my culture, but learn a little bit more about traditions that I didn't even know myself, but then also was able to kind of gear that towards my professional side as well. We have a lot of different events that we host throughout the year, and I'm events chair here at South Asia Force. So one of our biggest events, Diwali, I was able to host that and learn a little bit more in terms of how to cater to different types of individuals. And that's all that we do in sales. So that actually really helped me a lot. And I was able to use that experience to create a holiday market for my customers. So I had 6 of my customers come in and they actually sold their goods to Salesforce employees. And one of them actually ended up buying Salesforce. So it's just a really cool way that we're able to not only use the tower, but use the experience that we've had in other different types of roles. And Salesforce is really good about allowing you to not only grow within your professional interests, but also on the other side of it of different passions. So yeah, definitely understand that there.
It's so cool to see that, like, both of you guys having started when we were in kind of a remote work environment and seeing the evolution of what like the workplace looks like, and the fostering of relationships changes when you go from remote versus being in person. And Kunjan, I love how your involvement in, you've gotten involved in one of the many employee resource groups that we have here, and Shannon talking about just like the isolation of when you're alone in your apartment. And I think we can all kind of remember some of those moments not too long ago, but just now being back in the office, how much easier it is getting to foster those professional relationships and personal relationships and find mentors when we're able to meet face to face in the office. Well, and speaking of an office, we can't let it go unnoticed that we are streaming live from the brand new Salesforce Chicago Tower. We're all very proud of it, and it has a really, really cool spot at the end of the river. And we're even now featured on the architecture boat tour, which is super cool. If you've ever been to Chicago and taken that, I'm curious for you both. Like, what do you like most about the Salesforce Chicago Tower?
Yeah, no, I love the new Salesforce Chicago Tower. It's fantastic. Being able to work in an office where you're able to see this whole city is, I think sometimes we kind of take that for granted. Every time I have someone and they come visit, I always take them to Chicago Salesforce Tower. And I feel like it's kind of a staple of the Chicago landscape. So that's kind of really cool to see that it's like also included in the architecture tour. But not only that, but I feel like it's really improved my ability to connect with higher leadership and peers. I see a lot of higher leadership on our top floor. We have a Ohana floor where you can see all the great views, but not only that, we have a great barista. So every single morning, I look forward to my cup of coffee. I feel like not only do I get to know my peers, but also the staff here at Salesforce really well. So I think that there's just so many personal touches that the office has to not only, connect with your people, but other individuals from different professions. So really love working here. And I definitely think that it's something we take for granted.
Yeah. And Kunjan, you said that before coming to the Chicago Tower, you were working out of
Yes.
the Indianapolis office. And
Yes.
what's cool about Salesforce is a lot of our offices all have kind of the same features, or whether it's like our desk layouts, it's a very like open floor plan, lots of foliage and greenery, baristas. Like they really do a great job of like having all of our offices from a branding standpoint feel very like cohesive and unified, but it really does like make you want to be here. A lot of natural light, and not like the, like the old cubicles back in the day that are so gray and you had these like big walls up. So that it feels like when you're here, you want to collaborate, you want to reach across, the row and talk to your neighbors, which is super cool. Shannon, how has being in the office changed the way that you approach like networking in particular, and how's it impacted building relationships with your customers?
Yeah, totally. I agree with everything you and Kunjan have said. And then when it comes to relationships, pardon me, being back in the office has honestly made a world's difference to networking, relationship building. You're able to sit by your team, listen to them on calls, learn from them, but also get to know your teammates on a personal level. Just like Kunjan said before, it can be hard to network through a screen. And when you're right next to each other, you're listening to each other, makes it so much easier. You can turn around and ask your manager a question rather than hopping on a Google Meet. And there's just really no better place to network or take a meeting or a customer than on the Ohana floor over a cup of coffee. Truly the best views in the city. I've, like Kunjan said, brought friends, family members. It's honestly so enjoyable. And all in all, I think everything is just more organic in the office. You're getting to have those background conversations when you're in the elevator. You're able to just like have these real human experiences and interactions. And then, of course, the snacks, the coffee, the gym, those are all great perks too.
Yeah. We've all mentioned the Ohana floor a few times. Have we explained what the Ohana floor is? 'Cause it's a very Salesforce unique thing.
I don't think so, April. Why don't you take it away?
So on the top, usually the top floor of our Chicago, or not Chicago, all of our Salesforce offices, we call the Ohana floor, and Ohana, uh, sort of another word for family. So it's kind of helping with where the sort of the name of it comes from. But what's really awesome is it's a great place not only to kind of socially gather with other people within the office, but usually being on the top floor in some of our major cities usually has like some of the best scenery that you can get. So it's a very highly desired spot to do your networking, grab that coffee chat, or if you're like people on my team, every morning at 9 a.m., they all head up together, grab their cup of coffee together, and come back down ready to hit the phone. So yeah, we love the Ohana floor.
It provides a great break in the day.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of kind of like the networking stuff, and Shannon, you talked about like being when you were coming up from BDR to AE and some of the benefits of being in the office or being near kind of the people who you want to be with next. I can remember as an account executive, very similar story too, of just like sitting. I was only a few rows away from one of the VPs. That was in a higher level up that I was ultimately trying to get to professionally, and from that we were able to form a genuine relationship that you just can't get virtually. Like you both said, it's when you're able to just organically hear one another, and that like overhearing water cooler talk, even like those simple things you don't get in isolation or being at home. So we're really happy we love the in-office environment. It makes work so much more fun.
Yeah, no, to echo what you said, April, like my whole team is in Chicago, and the people that I support for retail are also all my account executives are in Chicago. Their leadership is in Chicago, their leadership is in Chicago. So it's like a direct chain of being able to connect with the teams that I actually support, and like learning from them from like a BDR has been essential to, I know, my future role here at Salesforce.
And then not to mention, like you're just a floor away from your next role.
Yeah.
Like that is such a competitive advantage when thinking about growing your career here, that you can just go sit and talk to those people, shadow and look at like what is day in the life like as an account executive, so that when you're ready for promotion, like you're ready to hit the ground running. And I'm sure Shannon would echo that that's a lot of what drove her success too.
Yeah, I totally agree. And along with, the water cooler talk, the elevator moments, like all the in between, there's also just events at the tower that you get to actually network with people outside of your own team. Because sometimes even going to the other floor can be intimidating. But when you get those interactive events and you get to organically chat with people, that's really when you meet the people that are up market that you ideally want to work for someday.
Yeah. I think a theme that I'm picking up here too in like developing personal relationships is that something that can't be overlooked is I think Salesforce in particular just hires really good people. Like Kunjan, I think you talked about just, or Shannon, I think both of you have mentioned stories of where you reached out to someone even being remote and people were more than willing to help one another. It's, sales can be competitive, but I found that here, like, it's a different kind of competitive, like, it's more so like competitive with yourself, but
Totally.
it's a culture where, like, we all want to help each other win. Like, no one's trying to keep their best kept secrets. And I would encourage like anyone who's, listening or participating in this, that like when you're evaluating jobs in a career in sales, that like those culture things really matter. And I think as I've grown here, I've come to appreciate just how unique that kind of sales culture is, that like people want to be at the top, but they want to lift others with them too.
Mhm.
It's really, really cool to be a part of.
Totally.
Yeah. We're in our role from 9 to 5, so it's great that we have such a great tower and people that we actually want to be with while we're working here. So
Yeah,
important.
it absolutely is. Well, I know we're kind of running out of time. So to wrap it up, I wanted to ask both of you, how have you overcome any challenges that you faced as a woman in the sales space? As all three of us being women, the topic of this is about women in sales. So do you have any career advice? Shannon, we'll start with you.
Yeah, April, I would say, the biggest challenge that I faced, especially early on in my career being in sports, which is a male dominated industry, is just honestly feeling like I don't deserve a seat at the table. And I got through this by really completely flipping that narrative upside down. So not only do I deserve a seat at the table, but in some ways I needed to work harder to get to this table. And I bring a unique and different perspective to the table. So honestly, I'm super grateful for all the challenges I faced in my career because I don't think any career worth having is going to not give you challenges. So it's really important to embrace those challenges, take them head on, because this is the mindset that is going to help you build that resilience that I kind of referred to earlier and excel in your career. And then I'd say, when it comes to advice, and I know this has been such a common theme, but build relationships early on in your career. Establish connections with female colleagues and leaders that you trust and look up to be a guiding light in your career. Be visible, be vocal, take up space. Don't hesitate to speak up and, of course, share your ideas because advocating for yourself is just so important and your contribution is essential in a competitive field like sales. And then lastly, know your worth, understand your value as a salesperson and professional, and let your results do the talking. And always just remember that you did deserve that seat at the table just as much as anyone else in the room.
I love what you said about like advocating for yourself and like and your contributions, because sometimes you may think everyone is seeing what you're doing, but they're not. And I think sometimes as women we're really gracious and we sometimes keep
Yeah.
those things to ourselves. But I
Mhm.
think like definitely for a career in tech sales that is competitive, sometimes you do have to be like your own brand ambassador and really put your accomplishments out there and like you said, be vocal, be visible, and take up space. I love that.
Yeah, and sometimes I think we think, we don't need to say it because someone else might have that idea or someone else is going to speak up. And I think that's just so common, for women in sales just to think someone else will say it. So just always speaking up.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you both said. I think one of the biggest challenges coming into this role, I didn't know as much about sales, but I kind of had a lot of self-doubt. Like I wasn't sure what I was doing in this space, and you have to get everything right all at once because we're women, so we have to come hard and come fast. But I think I've learned a lot within this organization is that failing is okay. And I feel like a lot of times us as women, we don't think that we can fail, but that's honestly how we grow. And I think the biggest thing, um, to echo what Shannon said, is just be able to have people that are going to be able to support you. But yeah, don't be afraid to have new ideas. Like, you're there for a reason. They hired you for a reason. And so knowing that, like, you're here, you're growing, and there'll be people that can help support you along the way. I know for me, I have a team that's just mostly all filled with women. So being able to see that in that space and like foster those different ideas has honestly helped me so much in my role of like, we are here in this space and seeing that, and Salesforce really does foster that. There's so many women here that are in leadership, so we really do like preach what we say. You know, we really do care about the women here, and we do offer them opportunities. So I think that's why I really love Salesforce. Is a lot of people can say buzzwords about what their company is, and you can be the number one in anything, but being able to actually say you are, and like, I feel like everything in terms of the culture here in Chicago, and sales is so fast paced. So you need to have people that are there behind you in your corner, understanding that like, this is your style. Not everyone's is going to be the same, but we can find individuals that, you know, have succeeded in this space, and you can learn from them and they can learn from you. So I think at the end of the day, it's just realizing that we are here, and you can see people in this space. We have so many people in extremely high leadership spaces all across the org. So
yeah, I think anyone can relate to these themes of like self-doubt in the workplace. But yeah, kind of like you said, as women, we have a tendency to be like especially hard on ourselves, or Shay said, feeling like we're not worthy or deserving of things. But I agree with you, Kanji. Like, I think the landscape of women in sales, particularly tech sales, has changed dramatically in the past decade that I've been in it. Like, it is far more equitable. And I'm really proud of Salesforce leading from the front on that. And like you said, like, they're really walking the talk. I think like whether that's I think that they've just really done a great job of making efforts for like inclusive hiring, and knowing that maybe women aren't always the best at advocating for themselves. Like, I've seen leaders step up and encourage or push, you know, more female leaders to be more vocal and have a seat at that, you know, metaphorical table, if you will. So I think it's awesome to see that. And I know like something that's helped me overcome some of these challenges as well is like finding both male and female mentors, because I think both can offer different perspectives that can help you succeed. Like, I know early on in my career, I was seeking other women, feeling like I wasn't, you know, I was sort of in the minority. Now as a leader, I find that actually my biggest mentors have been men, and who have really, really helped me in this kind of chapter of my life as I take on a leadership role, which is really inspiring. You can get both perspectives. And I think as women, there's like this impulse too to like hide our femininity, but it's okay to own our differences, like that taking up space. I think it's our differences are also like what's our superpower as women in sales. Like, for example, and excuse me, I'm making some generalizations here, but having managed and worked alongside many different people, I've personally observed that I think women tend to be better multitaskers. We're used to having to manage and juggle a lot at once. We're more detail oriented, organized, perfectionist. And best of all, I think like we're more emotionally in tune with ourselves and others, which is so important when you're in a deal cycle. Like, you have to be able to relate to the person you're selling to, see where they're coming from, how to overcome their objections, making sure you're listening to what matters most to them. And I think for all of these reasons, like, that's why we continue to see more and more women being recognized as top performer in tech sales. So I think the advice, you know, I'd give to others listening to this is like, embrace that your differences as a woman will be your superpower in sales.
Definitely.
definitely.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. So Shannon, Kanjan, it's been awesome getting to chat about our shared and unique experiences being in tech sales here. And thank you both for adding your wonderful perspectives and expertise to this conversation.
Thank you,
Thanks
April, so much.
Thanks. And for those listening, be sure to check out Salesforce's profile by visiting careers.salesforce.com and join our talent community to be the first to know about these types of sessions, career tips, and much more. Thanks so much for joining and listening in.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.